wonderful. Well, that's it. Move to another class by 250 or 230. We have about an hour. Okay, less than an hour. Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you. Idea that there might be people interested elsewhere about the issue. And the way it turned out, we are really fascinated and so happy and grateful to the professor of the department, and as well as made possible by Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed, who is my principal collaborator in this project. Through his connections, we are here. And it's not a coincidence, and this is what I'm going to talk about, that and I have a prepared speech which I'll show side by side, but the couple of things that I wanted to especially talk about in the beginning is how we really conceived about this project and why it is important for us to. And I will start with some of my prepared remarks first, and then I will only show you two models that I was developing for just less than 1 month, just to show you why it is important for us as a project, things to talk about. So as I said, I will have some, and I didn't realize we have dual screen, but just to bear with us. And I will start by saying that His Excellency Ambassador of Bangladesh to Korea, and then Maxim Olivier Billard, Second Secretary from our Global Affairs Embassy, and Professor Park Sun, Kangwon Institute for Immigration Studies, and friends. It's an honor to speak to you, and thank you very much today. On behalf of the Institute, as possibly you have some idea, our partners, Center for Alternatives in Bangladesh, let me first express our appreciation for the generosity of your welcome. And this is the third phase of our project, and this is something, as you see on the screen, and it does seem like an itinerary. You buy a ticket, for going for vacation, so Bank of Manila, Jakarta, but it's not like that. It is more than everything that I do. And as I say that, and I will go through my prepared speech because I don't want to lose track of what I had written last night. Before I say what we have to come to propose, let me say that what we have not come to do, because we have not come to lecture the region about the humanitarian crisis that unfolded in Myanmar over the past decades, actually. We understand that you have long viewed the Myanmar file through the lens of classic Westphalian state and non-interference sovereignty, and others hold a range of legitimate positions on how engagement should proceed. We do not arrive with an alternative framework either to replace that approach. We arrive with something we hope will be useful within it. And when we say that this is the humble beginning of our interaction with you this afternoon, we also talk about a geopolitical inflection which has shaped not only maybe all of us are obsessed with the Iran war now, but it has been growing for some time. And here I would like to really start and pause for a question of timing, because you might ask, why are you in our region now? And it deserves a direct answer. And I'll start with the host, our Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Carney, gave what may be considered as one of the most consequential speech of the forum. Our Prime Minister named our moment plainly, I quote from him, not a transition but rupture, unquote. The rules-based order that Canada, like most middle powers, benefited from for 7 decades is no longer functioning as advertised. Red powers are using economic integration as coercion. The multilateral institutions we rely on, the WTO, the greengrocer who every morning places in his window a sign he does not believe because every other shopkeeper does the same. The system is sustained through that shared performance together. It's a metaphor that our Prime Minister used. And Bernie's call to Canada and to middle powers generally was to take the sign out of the window to stop pretending the old order still works as described and to build what we claim to believe in. And that is the profound message our Prime Minister shared in his Davos speech. And then water ran under the bridge, many times. But I still go back to because it is something profound. This another that you understand better than most culturally with greater around specific issues with partners who share enough common ground, what Prime Minister calls variable geometry, they can create a third path with impact. With the ongoing war on Iran, when traditional alliance is in serious jeopardy in Western Hemisphere, a continuous war in Ukraine, ongoing genocide and mass murder in Sudan, we really cannot ask others to solve the conflict in Myanmar. We have to take the burden as in each passing day this conflict is losing ground in the West. This is the geopolitical context in which we arrive in your region today. We are not here despite the rupture, we are here because of it. CRRIC's and CA's work, Center for Alternative Growth, led by Dr. Indias, and this project specifically is a small but deliberate instance of exactly what the Prime Minister described. A Canadian institution reaching out to Southeast Asia to build partnership grounded in research, shared values, and long horizon of investment rather than in hegemony or transactional logic. Put simply, we believe the strategic dynamics of the Conflict and Resilience Research Institute and Center for Alternatives and your research partnership belong at a higher level than they have been. We would like to test that belief with you as our premier engagement and subsequently over the coming 3 weeks on this train of shared evidence and sectoral research. So it's just the legacy of the project. We applied for funding, as you know, most of the research organization does. And when we are funded in 2024, I approached Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed, a foremost scholar in the region, and he kindly joined the initiative. And then we studied everything. I went to Doha to present a paper on humanitarian diplomacy, which has an angle to this project subsequently. And then we brought Southeast Asian Network for Human Rights as a collaborator. And in September, Winnipeg, we had our first international summits for 2 days, and we presented our concept note. Then we reviewed the concept note a couple of times. We went to Bangladesh in phase 2 of the project last November and January of this year. And we further revised our concept note, and the copy that you have to the core idea, which Professor Imtiaz will kindly explain in more deliberate way. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. But in our study research activities, we have seen there are multiple ways Myanmar conflict could have or should have been resolved, but none of these approaches are really giving us any result. But we don't want to say that these are redundant. They are working perfectly all right, but we have another plan, which we call Rakhine Stabilization Plan. And in this particular plan, what we are trying to do is that we use the language of reconstruction many times in this project, which has both positive and otherwise feedback. And after Bangladesh engagement, we have adopted a more kind of accurate term, what we are calling Rakhine Stabilization Plan. And let me explicitly say about why reconstruction. Reconstruction carries some connotations that do not serve us in this region and echo of external nation building, rather stabilization and possibly an honest language. And this is why we switched to this term. And in a couple of ways, I'll only show you three triggers that we have invested quite a bit, and I'll show you some modeling at the end, as I promised. It's a localized cessation, minimum return guarantees, and political settlement. Because in my model, I'll show what is the result if we do not get engaged seriously in resolving this conflict for the long term. And then I'll move to the primary task or primary ask from our side to you is that please join us in the second phase, which is going on, is for research. We need partners, we need honest partners, we need sincere partners to support and work together in a number of sectors which Professor Imtiaz will go into details. Each of these sectors require rigorous, regionally grounded research before a single stakeholder dialogue or investor engagement can responsibly take place. Two examples in recent past. Remember Afghan conflict, Afghanistan, war in Afghanistan? Major donors come together and they raise money, billions of dollars, and we don't know, we all know possibly the situation in Afghanistan now. Again, 2 weeks ago, it happened in France, massive donor meetings and billions of dollars raised for Sudan. Again, we are not critiquing this is noble approach of raising funds, but what we are saying that before doing this, you need research. You need fundamental research of understanding how you're going to spend this money and where for how long. So this is our main, point that we are seeking your advice and your support. And we need to understand how energy systems can be made more resilient in a fragmented sovereignty context and the infrastructure that we are talking about work together. And what we are going to accomplish today is just to share with you our ideas. And you have seen in this particular slide, then there are a number of stakeholders involved, and all these stakeholders are important, but it is not very easy to engage everyone with one singular narrative or one singular concept. You need vending concept and also convince these stakeholders why they should join EU. So I'm not going into details because Professor Imtiaz has detailed slides on that. So now I'll quickly talk about two models that I was working on, and I hope these are visible somewhere. Where are you? Okay. So first one, okay, this is up here. So first one I'll talk about Rohingyas in Bangladesh, because Rohingyas are in Bangladesh, they started coming in bulk in 2017 August, as we all know. But you'll find from Professor Imtiaz's slide, historically, Rohingyas are coming to Bangladesh, were coming to Bangladesh. In this particular model, which has been developed extensively using two AI models, one is one with OpenAI's economic integration model, and then creating a whole database and then transporting it to Cloud. And in Cloud, we use variable models to develop and forecast actually. And again, I will share these slides with the professor here today. And if you are interested, anyone, because we need this model to be more refined in the future and also to share widely. So if some of you are economists, please help us out. Anyway, so the first one is showing about hosting Rohingyas in Bangladesh as a test case. And Rohingyas are living in 19 more countries around the globe, but Bangladesh bears the largest burden. So that is what we are showing. So you see, overview-wise, but anyway, I think first I'll start with the methodology, because as a researcher, you start from there. So as you see on the screen, this model actual cost, World Bank, Rakhine diversion window is illustrated. And now you see what is the modeling. 2017 population was like this, it's 67,000. Then in 2026, as per the official record, 1.19 million. And it is more or less 2% growth per year. And you see in this particular projection, graph-wise, we are showing in 2026, as we stand here, 1.20 million nearly. And in the red upper graph that shows if we don't return, what will be the population by 2036 in 10 years. And slow return means we have calculated only 50,000 returns per year. That also depends on various variables, right? The condition of repatriation, etc., etc. And which is, I think, very, I would say, not very admirable or going to happen soon. So most probably we are talking about no return in terms of Rohingyas. Here you see the cost that we have calculated. It is something around funded versus not funded. Over $900 million we need yearly. And funding coverage we have seen from 2017 to 26, see how it is dropping each year. And what does it mean? Funding gap is food rations cut, educational shortfall, and host community problem. Annual expended cost will shoot up over $1,200 million. It will be close to $1,600 million if there is no return. And if slow return is expected, it should be hovering around $800 million. And cumulative 10 years cost I have shown in this right-hand side. As you also see, it will be close to $12 billion. $12 billion. So that is what it is. And Rakhine window, what I was trying to, and both Professor and I will discuss that if some of the money that donors are putting just for the basic human needs, if this so this one shows that if we divert some of the money from 2027 next year to 2036, 10 years, then you will have around $450 million you can direct without lot of disturbances. That's what we are showing. And this is something we are possibly advocating, and we are going to advocate in our trip this time, that certain amount of money could be redirected for the reconstruction plan in the future, so that Rohingyas, when they are back, they can take care of their activities. Very briefly and very quickly, the compound cost of Myanmar's conflict, displacement, economic collapse, and ASEAN spillover. As you can see, what I call displacement cascade, 3.71 million people displaced so far internally, 1.61 externally, and stateless people 1.3 million, and estimated cost per year from 21 to 23. We have taken this one from ICBL Analytics, estimate $26.7 billion. And in terms of ASEAN, and you see the number of people displaced is so much that you really cannot count the cost of reconstruction unless you do fundamental research and do some kind of modeling. Malaysia hosts, I think, most of this population after Bangladesh, then Thailand, Indonesia, Cambodia, and Laos. We don't have any data from Brunei. And this is the economic impact. Real GDP growth is -9, and it is going, and we have also shown the projection in 2021-22 is -12. And inflation, if you add, it will be -31 actually. And this much of money is required just to contain the conflict in one. And also don't forget, you have shadow economy in Myanmar going on, regional scam center, opium economy, and this is the breakdown of the amount of money invested or played around this one. And finally, I'll show maritime crisis where people are drowned each year due to human trafficking. You see the statistics here, year-wise. I just compiled 3 years, and you see the impact of this human trafficking that is costing if we don't resolve this problem. And of course, I calculated Malaysia, unrealized opportunity what legal integration could unlock. That is what people are saying nowadays to Bangladesh too. But there's a different discussion. I just wanted to show you that the economic impact of this conflict is massive. And if you don't do anything, we just keep lingering in this conflict, it will even be broader and broader. So that is all I had. And in closing, allow me to close by returning to Prime Minister Carney's Davos friend once again. He said he's taking the sign out of the window. Okay, we are not mourning the old order. We are building with partners what the rupture makes necessary. The Rakhine Stabilization Plan, as we propose, is one small brick in that larger construction, a single sectoral research first, regionally anchored effort that tries to do honestly what the old pathways have failed to do. And allow me to add Nelson Mandela's word from Long Walk to Freedom. I always quote it because I like it. For many reasons that you understand, and he says, what a beautiful way. After climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. But I can rest only for a moment, for with freedom comes responsibilities, and I dare not linger, for my long work is not ended, unquote. Folks, our work is not ended. The partners you see before you are here, first and foremost, to learn from the region. What we ask in all these places is that you walk a few steps with us on the terrain of research and evidence before the harder terrain of politics kicks in. Thank you very much. Who's presenting? Oh. I downloaded. It is downloaded somewhere. Let me see. Huh? Where is popcorn? Which one? This one? No. No. Sir, what is your PDF file? It was there, hanging around, right? This one? Yeah, yeah. Just open the PDF. Right. And the last file. It was there, I saw it, right? Yeah. Yes, they're the same. Yeah. They're the same. Yeah. Go up. Yeah. Somewhere here. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. It's all right. Right. Yeah. Thank you. Can you be here or you can do the other one? Sir, will you be here? Yeah. Okay. Good. What do I? This one, right? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, yeah, Professor Song, Ambassador, young friends. Well, Kaushal has made my task a little bit easy, so I'll just go through some slides so that we can have a good discussion. I'll go straight to the plan that you're referring to. The whole concept note is amendable. It can, it went to 9 or 10 version, and I'm sure by the time we are back home, it will have more versions. Already, you know, there is a suggestion that it be called Rakhine Stabilization Plan. Uh, that makes easier to understand. But we are, as I said, we are open to solutions. Uh, let's go quickly to the idea that this is the first phase, the concept note, and we had X number of meetings that, as Council was also pointing out. The phase two is a critical one, and this is where we want university, KNU to join, and that's the research phase. The research phase is critical before going to the other three phases, and this is the area where the idea is to link the Rohingya capacity building with the reconstruction plan or the stabilization plan. What is going on today in Bangladesh? There are donors who are investing a lot in the capacity building, but there is no understanding of what this capacity building will do. So when we had meetings with the Rohingyas, they were saying, yes, we are getting capacity, but what do we do with that? And Bangladesh government is also a bit hesitant in this capacity building thing because they think that the donors are trying to make them stay in Bangladesh for good. And that's the reason they're giving this. So they are a little bit hesitant of, on this idea of capacity building. So way out is, as we have thought through it, that we need to link the capacity building with the plan. And so, if in the plan, and as I will try to discuss, if you have a health sector, it will need, if you know that this, you will need this number of hospitals, so you know that you need nurses, you will need doctors, continue when they go back. Otherwise, there will be no interest, and Myanmar government will also not find any interest in getting them back. So this link is very critical, and that is what the research will come up. So if it is in the agriculture area, if it's some crop production, if we know that this is the research and the kind of crops that we want to develop, you can actually start working on building the capacity in the Rohingya camps on those crops and see how that can be linked to the plan. So phase two is critical, and then once the phase two or halfway through the phase two, I believe phase three can start, and that is where you dialogue with stakeholders, including investors who would want to invest. And here, more the merrier, in fact, because there are countries who would be interested in here, there may be countries who would be interested in manufacturing, maybe some in infrastructure, some in education. I understand KNU works on education. I think that one area maybe they would be interested to develop the education sector as well. And this I say because when we were talking to the Rohingyas and all of them, there's one group of people that we met, they all wanted to go back to Myanmar. But the library that we did, have you thought about that? Why will the books be there? Have you thought about that? And he said, no, sir. I said, somebody has to think about it. Somebody has to do the research. But how many teachers do we need? Who will teach? What will be your history? Have you thought about that? And then I had done my own experience back in 71. I was just a class 9 student, but I left my parents. I went to Agartala, to India. I literally slept on the pavement, So I have experience of sleeping on the pavement. And I said, even as a class 9 student, I remember we used to discuss what would be the education policy of independent Bangladesh back in 71. So you need to start working. Nobody is going to work for you on these matters. So let's go quickly on some of the slides to give a sense of the So the persecution is a long history that the Rohingyas were facing in Myanmar. It's not something new. What has happened, something new, and this is, flagged in red, and this is 2017. You see, the Rohingyas were driven out in the 70s and 90s, also in large number to Bangladesh. But in both sense, they were repatriated. So when people say, oh, refugees don't get repatriated, that's not true. Because in the 70s, they were repatriated, and also in the 90s, twice. But this time, in 2017, there's a clear case that some crimes against humanity, or some would say genocide intent, took place. That was not so much clear in the 70s and the 90s. And that makes it much more problematic, and that is how the Rohingya case also became an international issue, and that is how the case landed up in ICJ and ICC. So it became more complex than what it was in the 70s and the 90s. Now, the Rohingya population, don't forget, it's a bigger population than Bhutan. Bhutan is less than 800,000, but Bhutan is in Bangladesh. Only in 3 months, they have a population of 1.16 million, and this is September 2025 UNHCR figure. And you can easily see it's a bigger population than Bhutan's population. Bhutan has a king here, a young person, younger than me, actually looks after more people than Bhutan, and it's only in 3 months. So just to give you a sense, it's a country inside another country. It's so huge. Rangers are also spread throughout the world, the 19 countries, and it has kind of a similarity with the Palestinian diaspora spread throughout the world. And as you know, when you spread throughout the world and the problem doesn't get resolved, it becomes more complex, and it's not going to go away. Very quickly, to give you a sense of why it is so complex and why it is taking time, I think we need to understand the nature of the Myanmar state. The Myanmar state is a very different kind of state than a Westphalian state. It's not a Westphalian state. It has fragmented sovereignties. This is something that we have not taken into recognition. There are countries which have fragmented sovereignties. Afghanistan also is a case, or was a case, or still a case of fragmented sovereignty, and probably that's the reason the United States, after staying 20 years, could not resolve the problem. Myanmar is also a country with fragmented sovereignties. There are 135 ethnic communities, but out of 135, at least 8 to 10 have proto-sovereignty. They have their own military, they have their own flag, and one or two have their own currency also. So it's a different country. It's not like any Westphalian state. And that is very important for us to understand. Very few countries know how to deal with fragmented sovereignties. Among the neighbors, I can only think of China know how to deal with fragmented sovereignties. But they deal with almost all the ethnic communities, including Tamil. So that's probably through their own experience. It's complicated this time because it happened 20 years back or 25 years back, but this time was a serious one, that the majority community got divided. And they got divided into PDF versus Tamil. Both are from the majority community, keep in mind. And that has made it complex because that allowed the ethnic armed organizations to go for kind of taking the opportunity to make the territorial claims even bigger. So you have at one level, you have NUT, PTA versus Tamako, and at the other you have the ethnic armed organizations versus Tamako. So that's two levels of conflicts. So that is what is making that conflict. And some of the ethnic armed organizations have relationships among them. The Free Brotherhood Alliance is a good example, which also includes the Arakan Army. And as you know, the Free Brotherhood Alliance also negotiated with Tamado with the presence of China to come and stop the e-gambling that was taking place in China-Myanmar border. So what we have, the complexity is not has not ended. It has compounded and become bigger because you literally have de facto sovereignty in the Arakan currently, with some suggesting that as much as 70% of the Arakan is under the Arakan Army's control. Although the key logistics, highways and the ports are still under the Tamado, but much of the land is under the Arakan Army. Now, they have not asked for independence. If they had asked for independence, Arakan Army, it probably things were a bit easier. But it looks like today or tomorrow they'll go back to negotiate with the Indo. And that's they have done also. So they're not looking for independence state at all. And that makes it much more complex. So probably they will go for a hyper sovereignty or hyper autonomy, maybe, we don't know. But it's clear case that is very different from an independent movement. Independent movement is easy to handle, but this is much more complex because they will go for negotiation. And there's already a talk with the current government saying that they're going to soon invite all the ethnic armed organizations and sit down. Problem for general, public to understand. If one has to go back to 2008 Constitution, which has this interesting understanding that if you have a community with 50,000 population holding two consecutive areas, that is 50,000 plus 50,000, 100,000, then you get autonomy. And there are, out of 135 ethnic communities, there are communities which have less than Rohingya population, much less, but they have 100,000 people. So the idea is that the moment they recognize Rohingyas, the Rohingyas will get autonomy. And so the understanding is that if they get Rohingya, if the Rohingyas get identity, then they will have their own law, the Sharia law, the Islamic law. So this has been flagged, and that has made other ethnic organizations and communities, including the minority community, go against this idea of giving them any citizenship. Although it can be worked out differently, and we can come back to the discussion if required. Very quickly on the pathways. So keep in mind the complexity that I was referring to. So it's not easy, to solve this problem. All the slides, the slides that are just reflect, will tell you that it is really complex. Now, in that complex nature of state, let's look into some of the pathways that we already have, and it's present. It's not lost. It's still active, but as Dr. Kaushal was pointing out, it has not delivered. The first one is bilateral. There have been series of meetings of bilateral meetings between Bangladesh government and government of Myanmar. There are next number of sittings, but that has not really worked. There has been signing of MOA, Memorandum of Arrangement, but that Memorandum of Arrangement has not worked. So this is the pathway one. Pathway two has been the multilateral approach. UNHCR also got involved, and UNHCR also signed agreements with Myanmar and Bangladesh for voluntary, safe, and dignified return of the Rohingyas, including in that agreement, with an assurance on the issue of citizenship, status, freedom of movement, and security in Myanmar when that could be provided. And this was also signed way back in 2019, and nothing has happened on the multilateral approach too. The third pathway has been the tripartite approach. where China got in. Again, in September 2019, China, Myanmar, and Bangladesh. China volunteers and China has relationship with both the countries, but nothing has happened there. So an idea of a pilot project, but that pilot project has also not worked. My argument has always been that why not other countries, getting involved in the tripartite approach. Japan could have been, because Japan also has a relationship with Bangladesh and Myanmar. India is another country, at least earlier, India also had a good relationship with Bangladesh and Myanmar, but, only China so far has, taken this path seriously, but somehow that has not delivered. It is still on. Talk to China policymakers, they say it's difficult, but it's still on. The pathway forward is accountability. This is one pathway which has made some headway and has made some progress, because for the first time the Rohingyas got recognition in the world body. Earlier they never had recognition by an international body, and so there were two rulings by ICJ in 2020 and 2022, and in both the judgment they recognized the Rohingya as an ethnic community, and it was done unanimously. What it means, even judge from Myanmar was also there in this what do you call the judgment that was given. There was some development also in the issue of accountability, but the US government came out and said in March 2020 that Myanmar military has committed crime of genocide and crime against humanity. And also in the Argentina court, there has been an arrest warrant in February 2025. So if you look at accountability, there has been some progress, but then accountability takes years. And even if you have the best results from ICJ, if the judgment, 5 years or 10 years from now, if the judgment goes in favor of Rohingya, probably it will, but even then, I don't think they can naturalize it because they have to go through the Security Council, and in the Security Council, as you know, it will be vetoed. So in terms of applying, even if they were applying for reparations on war, it's not going to be easy. So it's an effort. We are not against it. It should be pursued because justice is one issue that should be pursued on its own merit. But that's one pathway which will be longer. There are what we call good signs that is going in the right direction, but it is not going to deliver, and it's not making Myanmar excited. Myanmar is not excited about this pathway anyway. The fifth pathway that is already in some in motion, and that is reinforcing sanctions. There also we find key countries not interested in it. They have not joined. South Korea has not joined. India, Australia, Japan. Very four important countries have not joined. Those who have joined, USA, but USA under Donald Trump, he made it more flexible. So, sanction also has not really worked. To the extent, the kind of sanctions that you see against Russia, with the Ukraine, or against Iran, or against North Korea, you don't see when it comes to Myanmar. So, sanctions have not worked. So there are five approaches. All are good. We are not against it. Our idea is how about adding one more. But keep in mind, all the five approaches are sticks. Now, any student of diplomacy will know that in diplomacy is always carrot and stick. Diplomacy cannot be just stick; it has to be carrot and stick. So we want to add something, and it's not a stick; it's a carrot. And the carrot is, taking cue from Einstein and Sun Tzu that every crisis creates opportunity. So you have way back Sun Tzu, and you have Einstein saying the same thing, and this is where the Rakhine stabilization plan or the Rakhine reconstruction plan comes in. And this is the pathway, the sixth pathway, which is, as I mentioned, is the carrot. Now, it has taken lessons, key lessons from Marshall Plan and also DRI. One can refer to it. Marshall Plan, people have forgotten that Marshall Plan is the first, example where a victorious power agreed to help defeated powers. That has never happened in history. That was the first time, and for that reason, George Marshall gets a Nobel Prize in the 1950s. Now, when it was flagged, it was not really popular at all, and everybody was critical of Marshall Plan. That why are you helping the Germans, and why are you helping the Japanese? With the same idea, the construction plan. And probably, and I always joke on this, that even President Truman was not really happy with the idea, and maybe he said to Marshall, "You go ahead, let it be. You face the music. I don't want to face the music." Otherwise, it could have been the Truman's plan because he was the president. But the Secretary of State became more famous with this whole idea of helping Germany. And as we know today, the German and the French who didn't like each other, they fought three great wars. But today they have embassies on the same group in Bangladesh. They have embassies, and I always say that if Hitler was alive, he probably would have committed suicide second time. Thinking that how that is possible. So if the French and the Germans can work together, and I think Marshall Plan has made a difference. And if you look at BRI, this is also interesting. BRI, and if you go deep into African countries, you will see that they are gone through conflicting areas. And the conflicting actors have agreed to some of the projects, including in Pakistan, where I'm sure you're familiar with the Pakistan-China relationship, and you will see there also the conflicting actors have gone in favor of this infrastructure development. So there are lessons, but it's not like copying from a Marshall Plan or from BRI, but just to give an example, there are examples where you can create a carrot and make a difference to the conflicting parties. They are different in the form. Marshall Plan disbursed infrastructure funding in the form of grants, in-kind subsidies, and direct loans, whereas Belt and Road Initiative is primarily reputable loans that are agreed between BRI partner governments and Chinese policy banks, whereas the Rakhine Stabilization Plan talks about investing in a public-private partnership. So here, where we need to work with investors, particularly the private investors, how they can be brought in to see where they can invest. Now, very quickly, I don't want to go into details. I want to keep some space for Q&A. We identify 6 areas, but you can increase them: agriculture, health, manufacturing, infrastructure, education, and energy. Now, interestingly, when we were Rohingyas, I pointed to them that because the group that we met, they all wanted to go back. So I said, okay, you want to go back, but have you thought about how many hospitals you need? Where will medicine come from? The day after your repatriation, you have a headache. Where will paracetamol come from? And they said, no, so we haven't thought about it. So I said, somebody has to work on this, how many medicines you need. And so there will be countries who will be interested in agriculture, maybe some countries will be interested in health, not necessarily all the countries will be interested in everything. But, you can have a win-win situation because, as I say, it's a public-private partnership that can make, the investors also profit from the investment. But, you can increase the areas. But to go deeper into it, you need research in all these 6 areas. Without research, you can't go. So, for example, on education, we need to have a serious research that, at the primary school level, what are the requirements? At the secondary level, at the tertiary level, who's going to print the books? Who's going to create the syllabus? What kind of syllabus they are going to teach? How they can rectify the animosity that is there with the indigenous community? Who's going to do that? If that task can be started, then the capacity building can actually help when finally things, when things will come to a point when it can be resolved. Now, when it comes to stakeholders, there are not too many stakeholders. We have identified around 20 stakeholders, including, of course, South Korea. You can see Australia, Bangladesh, China, India, United States, UAE. These are the countries who are already involved in funding the Rohingya camps in some form and in capacity building also. So it's not too many, it's not 140 that you have to deal with, it's only 20 of them. So it's easy, it's not too much of a work that this project is demanding. So these are the stakeholders where you need to negotiate and just informing them that look, you are already investing, so why don't you link up your capacity building project or some of the areas that you really need to really, if you want to invest, when you start thinking from today. Now, very quickly, after you finish the research, then you sit down with the pie that you have in your hand. You negotiate with Tamado, and I advocate here military diplomacy mainly because the other side is fully military. You can't have only civil diplomacy. You can think of military diplomacy as well beyond track one. And then also you negotiate with ethnic armed organizations, including the Arakan Army and the civil military diplomacy beyond track one. And pointing beyond track one, because I think the track one has to come at the end, not in the beginning. It has to be other tracks first. Because if the track one comes, not government officials. So the track one is to come later. So once the negotiation is done and more or less you have a clear picture and you foster a multi-track diplomacy with all the tracks that you can think about, you can bring the media, that also is very important at different level. And once you have more or less finalized the thing, then you can start thinking of negotiating with Tamado and having the summit. So the next phase is the research, which is very fundamental. And once the research is done, you do the dialoguing with the investors, then with the Tamado Arakan Army, and last phase would be summit at the micro and macro. Summit should not be in the beginning, but unfortunately, sometimes we go for summit in the beginning and nothing really happens. So summit can come at the very end when more or less everything has been done and agreed upon. I'll stop there. Thank you very much. But feel free to ask any questions if you have any, if you have time.
We have moved to another classroom, but then
we can talk about it. No problem.